If something is too good to be true, it probably is.
They prefer to use a cheap traffic just in order to save some bucks, maybe a lot of bucks, but at the end, it's going to be a short-term campaign. First, most common mistakes is that they choose volume over quality.
The bonus one would be automate before you scale. You basically have to build this trust based on almost nothing.
Hi there, welcome back to CCtalks. Today, we're sitting down with Vera, our Vice President of Supply, and with Inbal, our Client Success Team Lead, to explore how Creative Clicks builds, scales, and sustains performance partnerships. Today, they will share what makes a great publisher partnerships, the red flags they look out for, and the behind-the-scene hustles that powers the performance marketing engine. So, welcome Vera and welcome Inbal. How was your trip to Amsterdam?
Great. It's always good to be in the office. Both of us are mostly remote, so it's great to see everyone and catch up with all the team members.
Okay, let's jump right in. Let's start from the basics because not everyone is as accustomed with what you guys do on the day-to-day. So for people outside the industry, the term supply can be a little bit abstract. Could you maybe, Inbal, tell us a little bit what you do and what's your day-to-day like?
Sure. So when we're talking about supply, we're basically talking about media, which is all the placement where we can show an ad. Every time a user visits a certain page, it's an opportunity for us to show him an ad. It can be via website, mobile apps, different social platforms, streaming platforms, different DSPs that we are running on. On a day-to-day basis, we work with publishers, these website owners, mobile app developers, different DSPs that we are working with. And we need to make sure our ads, our campaigns are running to the right people on the right placements. In order to do so, we need to make sure we are running decent traffic, clean traffic from any fraudulent activity. Of course, you can't avoid 100% fraudulent activity. We will discuss this further later. But to make sure we can minimize it as much as we can, share quality reports, everything that can be done in order to boost our publishers' traffic, to grow our advertisers' ROI.
Okay. And Vera, how do you approach starting a new partnership? What's the onboarding and testing phase like?
Yeah, sure. So typically when someone is onboarded with us, it comes through 3 avenues. So either they just organically sign up on the website because they heard about us or saw us. Either we meet them at a conference, or the third way is if someone brings them to one of the meetups that we potentially host. Typically, we try to make the onboarding process as quick as possible, obviously, while doing as much due diligence as we can. So personally, for myself, if someone reaches out to me or is referred to me, I will always jump on a call. Typically, it's a video call just because I want to vet them and kind of see the person before I start working with them. It's also a good way of understanding how they want to be communicated with. Some people prefer to only email. Some people I have almost a daily call with, which is a bit uncommon, but we try to have a tailor-made approach for every single publisher. Other than that, once we kind of start, we make sure obviously we have financial information. We make sure we go through the technical integration, which sometimes is quick and sometimes it's not. And then we pretty much get to the testing phase. So the testing phase is the most critical because we need to ensure that we're vetting the publisher while also communicating all the expectations of what they're actually running. Once we do all the initial stuff, we kind of pick an offer. What are they going to run? How are they going to run it? We make sure that there's a good match and that things make sense. And that, if someone is running on Meta or on Google, that's allowed by the actual advertiser that we have or by the internal product that we have. And then, we pretty much just start running the traffic. Depending on the category, we either have weekly or bi-weekly or almost daily checks in place to ensure everything is all good. And once we kind of have the green light from our side and from the advertiser side, we start scaling.
Okay. And now to transition a little bit into how Creative Clicks drives values for publishers. This question is for you, Inbal. How do you balance the need of publishers, which of course are looking for more revenue, with the advertisers' needs who are searching for more quality traffic?
So it's about to finalize a win-win situation. Well, as you mentioned, publishers want to grow revenue and advertisers want to see good performances. This is where our role comes in. We need to make sure to do constantly quality checks, to monetize the traffic, to make sure we are hitting the KPIs or a certain benchmark, to make sure we are running a decent CR, to make sure there is no fraudulent activity, as mentioned, as possible, Most of our advertisers here in Creative Clicks that we are working with are direct advertisers. Luckily, we have an agency access for most of them, and we are able to track on real time the traffic. So it's okay to do some tests. This is how you grow, and this is how you explore opportunities. But when you are able to see the traffic and finalize it and read at a real time, you're able to help your publishers to improve their performances and reach to a quality traffic and engage high quality users for our advertisers. And at the end, both goals can be reached if we will just focus on quality.
And since it's an industry that's very dynamic and changes a lot, how do you usually stay ahead of industry changes, for instance, in different platforms, formats, or partners' needs?
Yeah, so the edtech industry is super dynamic. So staying ahead is basically mean to adapt changes all the time, to learn, to test on an ongoing process, bring fresh ideas to the table, to attend events and conferences, to track after, to put a close eye on industry trends, to understand the advertising changing needs and both publishers. Actually, one of our top priority goals is also to keep a close relationship with our partners. And I'm talking about both advertisers and publishers. Close relationship with our partners is not only valuable and profitable, it is, of course, but it also gives you a constantly feedback from the inside of what's going on in the industry. Sometimes even a small tip from a certain publisher can lead to a whole new big opportunity. We always need to make sure to stay ahead, to be curious, always to explore new ideas and adjust ourselves to the industry changes all the time.
You both mentioned the fact that quality is a pivotal part of the process. Vera, how do you spot potentially bad traffic right from the source?
I mean, the number one rule that I go by personally is if something is too good to be true, it probably is. On one of the first days that I got into the industry, the guy that was training me basically said, keep asking questions if things don't make sense. He was like, don't be afraid to keep asking until you even almost annoy the client, as long as it makes sense to you and it seems like the answers are what they should be, then keep going. So another thing that I mentioned, obviously, is that I do jump on those calls when I first vet a new publisher, and I make everyone on my team do that as well, is because obviously on the online space, it is online. So we don't meet a lot of our clients. I've had some clients that I worked with for 12 years now, and the first time I met them was last year. You basically have to build this trust based on almost nothing. And when you do kind of like a call or a video call, you can vet the person and see oh, it's a real person. They're not just reading off of a sheet, or, they're not just copying answers from somewhere else. So that's definitely one big thing, is make sure it's a real person and that you're working with who they say they are. Other than that, I mean, like many other industry standards, we have our own proprietary software. We have a lot of checks in the software itself where, if something looks a bit off, it'll signal to us to look at it. Obviously, we're integrated with all the main MMPs as well for mobile, like AppsFlyer, Kochava, all of that stuff. And then on top of that, we do have a team of account managers who are constantly doing those daily and weekly reports and signaling to us if something looks off. On top of that, new this year, we are going to be hiring a compliance manager. So I actually did an interview this week with them, with another member that we're probably bringing on board, who will be kind of like a unbiased middleman who will be doing, checks throughout the system, checks on the traffic, on the publishers. But essentially, it's just regular communication, talking to your partners, making sure that everything is good, talking to the advertisers, making sure that the expectation of what we've promised is actually being met.
I think it would also be interesting to dive a bit into the red flags of the industry, since you've already mentioned a couple. Maybe, Inbal, could you tell us what are some common mistakes that publishers make when they're trying to scale up too fast?
Well, no, publishers do mistakes, and this is our role to control it. First, most common mistakes is that they choose volume over quality. We need to always to make sure we do some quality checkups, make sure we are hitting the KPIs, make sure the traffic is clean, make sure to use all our tools to monitor the data and keep a close eyes on it. After years in the industry, we can already know how the media behave. Of course, there are different media channels, but we can tell at the beginning of, especially at the beginning of a new campaign, if there are suddenly spikes, if the bounce rate is super high, if the CR is too high or too low, if we are recognize some abnormal activity or user behavior, we can cut it at the beginning or push over other sources that performing better. Additional mistake is that they prefer to use a cheap traffic just in order to save some bucks, maybe a lot of bucks, but at the end, it's going to be a short-term campaign. It's not going to generate the desired results, and it won't be for the long term. Additional mistake is that they're using too aggressive, creative, or super old one and not fit, and it won't last. We encourage our publishers to use always proactive approach, to be on top of things. Today, publishers can optimize on their end using different tools in order to monitor the activity. We are seeing a lot of AI movement in the industry. We are using it ourselves in order to improve performances. We encourage them to try different marketing techniques in order to renew themselves and to refresh, or use even just different techniques in order to attract new users, new targeted audiences. This is a trial and error game. We always push them to explore new channels in order to grow their revenue, but their revenue is our revenue. And when they're able to provide quality users for our advertisers, it will just be a success for all sides.
Yeah, it will benefit both parties for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then to give some practical tips, especially maybe to people that are starting in the industry, what's the one piece of advice, Vera, that you would give to publishers looking to become top-tier partners?
So I have one, and then I'll give a bonus one. But the main one I would say is definitely transparency. Like I mentioned, it's something that we look for in any long-term partnership that we have on both sides of the business. We need to have open lines of communication, especially when it comes to managing the KPIs and the ROI for any of the tier one advertisers, or even for a lot of our internal products. Obviously, like Inbal mentioned, sometimes an unexpected outcome could occur and there could be a bad batch of traffic. But the main thing is just being able to talk to your rep on both sides. I've jumped on many calls, with my own publishers and even their traffic sources to explain to them like why this outcome was not what we wanted. And I've even managed to get refunds sometimes from the traffic sources to the publishers. I always try to believe that people are not doing something malicious on purpose, and that, an accident or a mistake could happen. The main thing is to just not have the same mistake twice. So the bonus one would be automate before you scale. Obviously in our industry, a lot of people are starting by themselves. It's a one-man team, and they want to make as much money as possible in the fastest time as possible. And a lot of things do get overlooked, like cash flow, invoicing, setting up proper hosting domains, all of these backup things. And now with AI and so many free tools on the internet, the main thing is just having a good, foundation in place before you start scaling. Because once you start scaling, the worst thing that could happen is, you don't get paid on a Friday, and then the whole weekend you can't run your campaign. So there's nothing worse than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was probably the two that I would give.
Yeah, super helpful. Thank you. And now I'm going to ask you one last question to kind of wrap it up. This is mostly for Vera, but of course, feel free to pitch in. Where do you see the future of the partnerships heading in the next 2 or 3 years?
Okay, cool. So 2 points on this topic as well. First point I would say is really building strategic partnerships on both sides. For myself and many members of my team, we run with only a select number of partners, and we really do the most volume with them versus with having, 100 or 200 partners. So that's number one. And then there's many people, in our industry who try to hide things and not explain things. So we just try to have everything in the open. I feel confident that I can call any one of my partners on the phone and be like, hey, what's going on? And I hope that they feel the same way too. Most of them I worked with here for years, so I'm sure they do. The second point I would say is really towards owned and operated sources. A lot of the publishers that we do work with are cultivating their own traffic. So whether that's their own push collection that they're monetizing, their own email collection, or even their own DSPs. These type of partnerships, I think, are always going to be preferred because there's full control and we understand what's going on. They understand what's going on. And we can have a lot of growth quicker versus, having to check quality for a long time. Since we've been expanding and, we are going to be celebrating our 15th year, one of the things that we're doing, yeah, I know, it's very exciting. One of the things that we do is we do host publisher meetups every year now for the last couple of years. So we do kind of do an all expense paid trip for some of our top publishers. It's a couple of days where everyone obviously relaxes, but the main takeaway from that is just the networking. We have a lot of push guys, a lot of Google guys, a lot of Meta guys, and everyone kind of feels like an open environment to share. And we've had some JVs also that come out of those. So that's something that's really exciting and really fun for us. And I think that's kind of where the industry is heading.
Okay. Thank you so much, Vera and Inbal, for your insights. And thanks to any listener for tuning in. We hope that today's episode gave you a behind-the-scenes look on what Creative Clicks is all about and how powerful partnerships can truly drive the business. If you're in the game, whether as a publisher or an advertiser, we hope this gave you some ideas and some precious tips about how to improve your game. And if you've not done it yet, make sure you subscribe to the CCtalks podcast and also follow Creative Clicks on all social media platforms. Thanks again, and see you next time.